Well, you may find it hard to believe, but it has been 9 years to the day since that massive fire, suspected arson, caused part of I-85 in Atlanta to collapse, shutting down, of course, a very critical artery in the city. And the rebuild that followed came at a remarkable pace. Let's talk more about that and more with Natalie Dale from the Georgia Department of Transportation. Natalie, good morning and happy 9 years later.
Well, thanks so much. I was actually looking up what is the anniversary present for 9 years. It is pottery or leather, so y'all know where to find me.
Okay, yeah, we'll send some pottery your way. I mean, take me back on a personal note, because Doug and I were talking. This is one of those like, where were you moments? Where were you 9 years ago when you got that call, and what went through your head?
Well, as a mom, this story gets kind of personal for me because I had a almost 1 year old in a high chair. I had teleworked that day before the age of teleworking. She must have been sick. And so I had her in the high chair and I was feeding her and I looked up at the TV and I thought that is a lot of fire on a bridge. And my phone started to ring. And as I'm on the phone with a local outlet, the bridge went down. And I just said, you know what, guys, I'm going to have to call you back because the question at that point was, what is going to be your advice for commuters tomorrow? And that was when when there was the fire, before the bridge had gone down, it was, what is going to be your advice tomorrow? And, my advice was, people are going to need to take time and have patience. Well, then the bridge went down and certainly advice changed very quickly. We all quickly relocated to the emergency management center where we worked for, about the next 45 days. My daughter, personal note, will be 10 this year. So not, that's how I count anniversaries with the bridge collapse is her birthday. And the bridge opened the day before her birthday. So she was born on May 13th. Her birthday was May 13th. Bridge reopened on the 12th. So, everything's kind of personal around where I was and what I was doing.
Hey, now Doug Turnbull here. You and I have talked about many times, and even about this incident. Of course, I remember we brought a cake up to the up to the headquarters to celebrate the opening of it with you because it was such a momentous effort, and I think that's really kind of the lead in for this interview, right? Is when we see, and I'm going to take this from the view. Let's just pretend I don't know anything about traffic. When we see express lanes take 5 years to get built and interchanges this long to get built, people go, well, how in the world did a bridge get rebuilt in 43 days? And I know there was a unique public-private situation there. Can you just kind of walk through the energizer, if you will, on that?
Well, that, for all the great things that being able to rebuild a bridge in 43 plus days, brought, it does bring a lot of things when we're doing your every average day project. So let's start with, this wasn't an every average day project. This was an emergency scenario. So this was tagged as an emergency by the, federal government, by everyone who was bringing materials, by everyone who was working on the project. So if we did every project this way, not only would you have to shut down entire traffic systems, we were able to do this because there was no bridge. So we had no moving traffic to divert. We had no traffic. We had, no traffic safety stuff because there was no traffic. So that's a big thing. And that's also a big expense. But expense is also an answer there, which is to do this in the speed and the efficiency which was done would make every average project cost 10 times more than what it costs to do in a normal timeline. We had steel beams that were manufactured for other projects being diverted to this project. We had C.W. Matthews being able to pull every available crew they had off of some other things because it was an emergency scenario. This is a vital corridor, not just to the city of Atlanta, but to the Southeast. And so there was a sense of, what can we do? How fast can we do it? Money was, in this case, not really an option. The federal government was able to make sure that we had the money we needed to do the work we needed at the pace we needed. And again, a big thing to say that we had no moving traffic, and that is, shut down one or two lanes, that's impactful. Imagine if we shut down entire roadways for projects, which, we're going to be doing a little bit of that soon with our 285 resurfacing project. And it's a big pain point. People don't want that. This was an emergency scenario. It was built as an emergency scenario. And so it's not really cookie cutter. You can't apply it to other projects. However, there are things that we did learn and that other states learned that sort of make that advanced construction possible in some aspects.
You mentioned a full closure of a bridge there, and you just teased it a little bit. Rachel Cox-Rosen and I have talked at generalities about the 285 rebuilds going on. I know that's not an emergency situation, but we are going to have some waves of that. I know there's not a lot of, and I'm not using this as a pun, concrete things to say as far as dates and stuff like that. But when you just threw that little bit in there, I'm sure somebody's ears perked up a little bit. Is there anything to say about what's going on there on the west side?
Yeah, I think the motorists who travel the west wall of 285 would disagree with you and say that it should be an emergency project to get that concrete rehabbed as soon as possible. That concrete is ancient. It was born before you or I, and it has been repaired and reslabbed, but it has not been rebuilt. And we're having to rebuild the entire west wall of 285 to bring more for pavement preservation, to bring a safer construction area, a safer roadway, because you see the deterioration of that. So based on how we have to do that, there will be in the future, perhaps as early as April of 2026, weekends where we will have full closures in a direction. So think about what it's like to shut down a whole roadway, I-85, what we're talking about today. And we're just going to have to do that for 2 days, but it is still so impactful. So you can't build projects like that. People would not be able to get where they needed to go if to build a project, we had to shut down the whole road system. We only do it in dire scenarios and for short amount of time. But on the I-85 bridge, we didn't really have a choice. The road was gone.
Natalie, as we just wrap up our conversation about that bridge collapse, if something similar were to happen today, would the response look any different, you think?
Well, something similar did happen in 23 in Pennsylvania, I-95. There was a fire under that bridge and it collapsed. It took them, they did it a little differently than we did. They sort of built they sort of built up the road and built a temporary bridge. So they say they did it faster than us. I would argue that is not, we're not apples to apples there. They built a temporary bridge while they built the permanent bridge. So it was done a little differently, but, lessons learned, a lot of lessons learned through this scenario. One of the first things we did after the bridge collapse was we sent a memo to all state DOTs about the storage of supplementary construction equipment. That was not uncommon for DOTs to store extra construction equipment or materials on our right of way. It's like putting, stuff in your own backyard. That wasn't uncommon. Now, in retrospect, storing it under a bridge could cause and, led to this emergency. And so we really quickly got out memos and said, check everywhere. If you have any supplementary construction equipment or materials stored under bridges, move it to a different area. We went throughout the state making sure we had none of our own materials stored under bridges. So, a lot of lessons learned, but it did happen again. It can happen again. And so what we learned, certainly we work diligently to make sure that's not going to happen in Georgia, but we did see it happen with another state. So, lessons learned from one state. We all share information as part of, state DOT's collective information sharing to make sure that everyone knows best policies and procedures should emergencies like this happen.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us here today and walking us back through that. What does they say about history? If you don't learn from it, you're bound to repeat it. And while you had the lesson there about storing the equipment, we also, as motorists, and we working down here in Midtown, right, had to learn. Okay, oh yeah, MARTA does exist. Oh, these are the alternates to the alternate here. And you all not only did an incredible job rebuilding, but also routing traffic through in the Buford Spring connector, which we thought was going to be shut. So thanks for your time today, and glad we could get on here and talk about some good news when we reflected.
Right. Well, Doug, you were with me there 9 years ago. We walked it together, and, so it's nice to talk about it again, to commiserate again today about it. So, we'll have next year's 10 years. So we'll see what we learn again.
I think the 10-year gift's probably going to be a little better than
pottery
or leather.
No one gets a 9-year gift.
Yeah. All right. Natalie, we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.